have plenty of time for a Q&A as well. But my name's Erin Bogan. I'm one of the associate directors at NC State University and very excited to be with you all this evening to talk a little bit about Admissions 101 and what do all these terms mean. But before we get started, we'll let Lauren introduce herself too.
Hi, everyone. Excited to also be here with you guys and partner with Erin tonight. My name is Lauren Grimes. I am one of the assistant directors in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at UNC Charlotte, and look forward to talking with you.
Awesome. And if you all have any questions during the presentation, please feel free. I know there's not a chat function, but you can definitely ask us. So you don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but if you want to just unmute and ask the question, please feel free to ask in the moment. You don't have to wait until the end of the presentation either. But we can go ahead and get started. And Lauren, I'll pass it to you first.
Awesome. Thank you. So we've kind of split up some of the terminology in relation to the application process. So maybe what you're going to see now or in the next few months, and then the enrollment process. So kind of next steps for enrollment at your institution and following that admissions decision. So starting with application process and what each school that you may be applying to may have in terms of their process. So we have early action, early decision, rolling admission, and then we'll also talk about regular decision. Early action is going to be a non-binding admissions application process and timeline. So students are receiving an earlier response or admissions decision to their application, but they don't actually have to commit or submit their intent to enroll to that institution until May 1st, which is the national deadline for students to submit their response or commitment. Early action, really there is no harm in applying early action. It just means that you're going to have that admissions decision earlier and you get to hang on to it until you're ready to do something with it. It's a way for you to kind of know what your options are as you're collecting different pieces of the puzzle, ultimately trying to figure out where you want to go. It's there and you know that you've been offered admission, but you can hang on to that until you're ready to move forward. Early decision is going to be somewhat opposite of that. That is a binding application process. And so a student that is applying early and they're applying to probably their first choice college. If they're accepted as an early decision applicant, they must attend that institution. So you're receiving that admissions decision earlier, you're withdrawing all of your potential applications from other schools, and you've committed well in advance of May 1st that you want to attend that institution. Then we have rolling admission. So that is going to be basically on a rolling basis every few weeks or potentially every so often throughout the fall and spring semester. As a student applies and submits their application materials to an institution, they can be reviewed, pretty much instantly. They're not having to wait until a specific deadline or a specific timeline to receive their admissions decision. Regular decision, we didn't necessarily add here, but regular decision is just a little bit later in the process. So for example, at UNC Charlotte, we have early action and regular decision. So you're just receiving your admissions decision a little bit later in the process. I want to say, Erin, is that the same for you guys?
Yes, absolutely. We're just early action and regular decision.
Yeah. So regular decision is you're finding out your admissions decision a little bit later, but it's also non-binding. But check with your admissions counselor at the institutions you're applying to talk about what benefit you most when applying.
I also think it's important to note as well is not every university or college is going to offer early decision. So this is only offered at some university and colleges. NC State, one of them, we do not have early decision. So we only have early action and regular decision. But some universities do have early decision. And if you know 100% that's your number one choice that you will attend if you are accepted, then that might be a great option for you. Now to touch on some of the other application terms that you might see would definitely be supplemental items or supplemental materials. So going to be anything additional to the application process that you would like to submit that is not required by the college or university. So for instance, this could be a resume. It could be a project that you worked on while you were in high school that you're very proud of. Some colleges and universities do not require recommendation letters, but if you have a recommendation letter, they will accept them. So those would all be technically supplemental items. So anything that you think really adds value or benefits your application, but might not be required for you to actually apply. Some universities will accept supplemental items and supplemental materials. And if you have the interest in submitting them, once again, I would contact the admissions counselor at that university to see how you can go about submitting those supplemental items on your application. And then an application fee waiver. This is definitely something that if you are offered an application fee waiver, we would strongly encourage you to use it during the application process. So an application fee waiver is usually towards any student that demonstrates financial need during their review during the application process. And if you are receiving a financial aid application fee waiver, we do encourage you to reach out to your high school counselor to see if you might be eligible for a fee waiver, and would encourage you to have that submitted over to the offices of the universities that you're applying to. No need to pay the application fee if you are receiving an application fee waiver.
And do you want to share in terms of application fee waiver what NC State accepts?
Yeah, for the most part, NC State will accept almost every application fee waiver that you can think of. There are some very common ones that are out there from College Board, from NACAC has application fee waivers. If your high school counselor deems you eligible for a fee waiver and they contact our office, we will waive the fee as well. So I would say almost every single one that is offered out there, NC State will accept. It normally does need to come from your counselor or from those organizations or agencies that are offering the fee waiver. So it cannot come directly from the student. And Lauren, same for UNC Charlotte?
Same. Easy.
Awesome.
All right, talking about middle 50%, this is maybe a term that you've heard as you are researching colleges, trying to figure out what the requirements are at specific institutions. The middle 50% is a range, and it can help a student gauge their competitiveness for admission to that institution. So big thing to note here is that the middle 50% is just that. It's basically a profile of admitted students that were offered admission into an institution, usually in the past year. And it's showing what the average 50% of students had related to unweighted or weighted GPA and SAT or ACT scores. It's important to keep in mind that that's just the middle 50%. So there are 25% of students offered admission who fall below the ranges, and then 25% of students that are offered admission above the ranges. One thing that got brought up in the last session that I think it's important to note here as well is that sometimes you might find that if you're looking or considering competitive majors at certain institutions, that oftentimes their requirements are going to be in that kind of 25% of students that were above those ranges or 25% higher than what the ranges are showing within that middle 50.
Awesome. And so now we're going to move on to some enrollment process terms. So this is really going to be information that for the most part will be most important in the spring of your senior year, is where you'll really start needing to kind of recognize what these terms are. But please feel free, if you have any questions, like we said, definitely feel free to ask as well. So the biggest one for sure that we get a lot of questions about is financial aid and scholarships with students. The first and foremost, I would say, is FAFSA. So this is the free application for federal student aid. The FAFSA actually opens up this Friday, October 1st for seniors. And we do normally recommend that students complete the FAFSA sooner rather than later. Just because sometimes when you complete the FAFSA, the financial aid office might request additional documentation as well. So the sooner you can get that in, it is helpful. in the review process for the financial aid offices. Almost every university and college out there does have financial aid advisors to work with prospective students too. So if you do have questions, whether it's completing the FAFSA or after you receive your financial aid package, definitely feel free to reach out to those financial aid offices at the universities that you're considering, just to make sure that you're truly understanding the package that is offered to you. There's going to be grants on there. There's going to be loans on there. There'll be work study terms on there. There'll be scholarships on there. Really talk to somebody about your package. Obviously, this is a major financial decision for students and families, and want to make sure that you're just understanding that package completely. In terms of grants, what these technically are, this would be a form of financial aid that usually doesn't need to be repaid at all for students. There are some exceptions on this. When a student was to withdraw from a school, sometimes grants have to be repaid. There's some teacher grants out there. Once again, when you're offered a grant, I think you should just make sure that you're connecting to make sure that this does not need to be repaid at all. Also very common that you'll see on a financial aid award is a work study job. This would be an estimate of how much a student could earn if they were to have a work study job during the year. Technically, a work study job could be working in the dining facilities, working in the library, working anywhere on campus. Undergraduate admissions usually is a work study position as well. So this would be working during the year for students and an eligibility to earn this amount of money that they could put towards their education. Now loans, this would be borrowing money. So this will have to be repaid. Once again, it's important to understand if these loans are going to accrue interest during those 4 years, or if the interest does not start until after the student has graduated. Merit-based scholarships. So this is really going to be based off the student's academic excellence or any special achievement. So merit-based scholarships, sometimes there's additional items that students have to submit for merit scholarships, and could potentially be additional review process. For merit scholarships as well. But if there's schools that you're interested in, make sure that you're looking through all the scholarships that could be eligible for you. And then need-based scholarships, these are going to be based.
How do you find out about which scholarships you can apply to? Like, is there like a place to look for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at NC State specifically, we have what we call our PAC Assist portal, which prospective students can look at as well. Which is going to give you a long list of all the scholarships that are available at NC State. When you are accepted to the university is when students can normally start applying for those additional scholarships. There are some that students can apply to before they receive an admissions decision. And then also there are some college-based scholarships that students don't have to submit any additional items for. If there is questions in terms of like, what am I eligible for scholarships? For NC State, it's our PAC Assist portal. But I would really say any school that you're looking at, just figuring out where can I find out this information, because there is a lot of scholarships out there, but sometimes there are some additional steps that students and families have to take just to be able to receive the most amount of scholarship available. And then need-based scholarship, as I mentioned, that's really going to be based mostly off of your FAFSA. So once again, important to get that submitted earlier rather than later to receive those need-based scholarships too.
All right, some additional enrollment terms. So first, the retention rate, or you might also hear it referred to as first-year retention. That's going to refer to the percentage of first-year students who return to the same institution for their second year. So they've been admitted, they choose to enroll as a first-year student, they come back for their sophomore year as well. Decision, this is going to be for a student that is still being actively considered in the review process, that may be applied in their early round, whether that was early decision or early action, and they are not going to receive their admissions decision maybe in that set timeline. They are going to be considered later during the regular decision applicant pool, but they are being actively considered. And oftentimes, if a student is deferred to an institution the institution might ask the student for additional information. That could be supplemental materials, it could be mid-year grades, a report card, wanting to see that senior year performance. Still very much actively considered. I know, I'm not sure what it looks like at all schools, but I want to say in the past few years, maybe prior to COVID, I want to say students that were deferred to at UNC Charlotte, maybe 78% of them received some type of pathway to UNC Charlotte, whether that was admission for the term they applied for, a spring admission. So know that it's not necessarily a bad thing. You are being very much actively considered. And then you have waitlist. So not every school is going to have this kind of admissions decision, but a waitlist is basically meaning that an institution has finished reviewing your application and they are just kind of waiting to see where their applicant pool falls in terms of your competitiveness overall to the institution or to a specific program. Admissions rate, also known as acceptance rate. This is the percentage of the total applicants that apply to a school and how many are accepted of those applicants and are offered admission. And then we have yield. You might hear this kind of in the spring season. This is the percentage of students who have applied to an institution and been offered admission and choose to enroll at that institution. And then you have deferring enrollment or a gap year, gap term. This is going to be different than that deferred decision. Basically, the deferring enrollment is when a student who has been offered admission is reaching out to the institution and asking to be deferred or delay their enrollment by potentially a semester or a year. Not all institutions offer the option for students to defer. They may make a student reapply for admission in their desired term, but some do. So just reach out to your admissions counselor if that's something that you're interested in after receiving that admissions decision.
And so at this time we have, we have about 6 minutes left for a Q&A discussion. And also Lauren and myself's contact information is here for you all too.
And if you have any specific questions related to our institutions, we're also happy to answer those now as well, if there's something specific to those admissions terms.
I have a question.